Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So for the first lesson, I'm going over the tones in Hoisan. And for those that don't have any background on the language, Hoisan is a tonal language, which means that every word has a tone. And that means that it has to be said at a certain pitch in relation to the words around it. If it's said at a different pitch, then it will change the meaning of the word. So it sounds complicated, but it's actually not. Just wait until I get into some examples and you'll be able to see the concept more clearly. For this first video, don't focus on the meanings of words or pronunciation. We're just focusing on listening for the tones. You want to be able to differentiate each tone and then finally be able to produce them yourself. So I'll just start right now. First tone we're going to go over is the middle tone. That's denoted with the number 2. So whenever you see the number 2 after a word, you're going to know it has to be said at the middle tone. Examples of the middle tone are goi, di, kui, goi, di, kui. So notice how my voice, it's level, flat, and steady, and it's at a comfortable part of my range, right in the middle. So let's learn the next tone in order to contrast and hear the middle tone better. So the next tone we're going to learn is the high tone. That is denoted with the number 1. Whenever we see 1 after a word, we know that it has to be said in a high tone. Here's examples of that. Hai, doi, shui, hai, doi, shui. So notice how, in contrast with the middle tones, goi, di, kui, hai, doi, shui, the high tones are higher up. So that's what it means when you see the number 1. It means that the pitch of these words needs to be higher in relation to the pitch of the number 2 tones, which are in the middle. The next tone is the low tones. These are denoted by the number 3. So whenever we see the number 3 after a word, we're going to know that all of these words need to be said at a lower pitch than what your 2-tone words would be said at, which is the middle tones. So here's examples of the number 3 tones. Hao, gan, bu. So let's contrast with the middle tones. Goi, di, kui, hao, gan, bu. Hear how my voice had to go lower for all 3 of these words. These next 2 tones are different because instead of just staying level and steady, they're falling tones. So you'll hear what I mean by that in a moment. I'll just go over it. The 4th tone, denoted by the number 4, whenever we see this after a word, it tells us that it is a middle falling tone. Here's examples of it. I, va, han. I, va, han. And you might be thinking that this sounds very similar to the middle tone words, goi, di, kui. But notice how those middle tones are said flat and steady, but the 4th tone falls with each word. I, va, han. And to help you differentiate these sounds, I'm going to say all of these words first as a middle tone and then as falling tones. I, va, han. I, va, han. And now I'm going to say each one right after the other. That way you can hear an immediate difference. I. Next word. Va, va. And the last one, han. So these differences are actually important. Here's an example. So there's I, which means low, and there's I, which means big or large. So han at a middle tone means to be thrifty, but han at the 4th tone means to love someone. Okay, so last tone that we're going to learn for today is the number 5 tone, Whenever we see the number 5 after a word, we know that it's going to be a low falling tone. Here's examples of that. Goi, dia, cat. Goi, dia, cat. So one of the distinguishing factors in the low falling tone is that your voice does start low, but then it drops all the way down. It drops so low that your voice will actually cut off at the end. So let's contrast. I'm going to say those low tone words, the number 3 tones. How, gan, bu. Number 5 tones. How, gan, bu. So let's say them first as low tones and then as low falling tones, immediately one after the other, so you can hear an immediate difference. Goi, goi. Dat, dat. Cat, cat. How, how. Gone, gone. Boom, boom. So it's very subtle, but you can hear how there is a difference between these words. And what I'm going to do now is these 5 tones that we just went over are the 5 basic tones in the Hoisan language. There are more tones than just these 5, but any of the further tones from here build off of these first 5. And that's why we want to just master these first. I'm going to say a word, Hoisan, and I'm going to just use these sounds to show you all 5 tones in all possible combinations, meaning I will say the word first, both of them as the first tone, and then the first one as the first tone and the second one as a second tone, and so on and so forth. Let's start and try to follow me. Look at the words on the screen for the tone that comes after and try to hear with your ear the difference between all of these. Hoisan, 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 Hoisan. Hoisan, Hoisan, Hoisan. Hoisan, Hoisan. Hoisan, 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 Hoisan. Hoisan, 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 Hoisan. Hoisan, 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 Hoisan. So I just used those sounds, how and sang, to show you all the different combinations of words. The word is actually supposed to be said at 4th tone and then 5th tone, Hoisan. And that word means young, as in a young person. So I'm going to just end with a sentence I made up that includes every single tone in the Hoisan language in all possible combinations of tones, like how I just demonstrated for you, except it's an actual sentence that makes sense and has a coherent idea to it. You probably wouldn't really say this sentence in real life, but it's just something I came up with for demonstration purposes. Go ahead and listen to it just so you can hear these differences in tone in an actual sentence. Kui hai gen dek kao sang doi bu hang ko go, kui wa ni hong dek yin yin ang ai gu ye ko go, kui yu wan xiang dek ang moi kui gong loi gi. Kui hai gen dek kao sang doi bu hang ko go, kui wa ni hong dek yin yin ang ai gu ye ko go, kui yu wan xiang dek ang moi kui gong loi gi. Kui hai gen dek kao sang doi bu han ko go, kui wa ni hong dek yin yin ang ai gu ye ko go, kui yu wan xiang dek ang moi kui gong loi gi.